old clips that are now surfacing, and it's essentially depicting the Kamala versus Donald Trump discussion pertaining to the Michael Jackson case. Now, I know a lot of you guys are new listeners to the show. We've gained a lot of new listeners over the last week. So in case you are like me and did not remember any details about the Michael Jackson case, all you remembered was the media telling you incessantly that he was a pedophile, I highly recommend that you go back and revisit our episode 55, which we did looking into the Michael Jackson case. It is stunning. Michael Jackson was without question being set up by some very powerful executives because he was fighting for control over Sony. It's completely crazy about how the cases even came about. Literally, the first person who ever made an allegation against Donald Trump was drugged into the allegation by his own father. I'm talking about that crazy, and that his father eventually killed himself. It's nuts. It's nuts. Anyways, at the time that all of these accusations were coming up, it was very much the media versus Michael Jackson because obviously the record execs had a lot of power over the media. They controlled the media at that time. Same story it is today, and why there are certain people who are protected. And so at that time, they were going around asking a lot of powerful people what their opinions were on the Michael Jackson case. And one of those people who was asked was Kamala Harris, then the deputy city attorney in San Francisco. And here's what she had to say.
That could mean life in prison, and cases like this can depend on the testimony of the child accuser.
In general, the child will be able to recall and recollect with some detail the incident, and that is persuasive to a jury, even if it is the only testimony that is available.
Ooh, betting against Michael Jackson, who was eventually acquitted of all charges. But what's really stunning is when you juxtapose this to what Donald Trump said at the time, then just a real estate magnate. Take a listen.
Michael's been a long-time resident of Trump Tower, and last night the Donald strongly reiterated his defense of Jackson with Larry King by going after the accuser's mother.
She's had plenty of experience at going after people. And she goes after him viciously and violently, and I saw a story and I read another story about some of the things she's done, and I don't believe it.
But you know what it's like when an indictment comes down.
It's tough.
It's presumption.
It's tough. It's tough to win, but I have a feeling he's going to win, Larry. The interesting thing is I've known Michael from many different standpoints, and Michael would spend a lot of time with my kids. I have beautiful kids, and at the time, like at Mar-a-Lago, and even in Trump Tower, the kids were very young. Michael would come, play with the kids. He just loved children. He was not a child molester, and I am certain of that. He loved children. He'd play with my son Eric and my son Donald, and he'd just play with them forever. He loved children, but he was not a child molester. And, you know, that whole final saga of Neverland and the police and what they did was, I think, a very, very bad part of Michael's life.
Just incredible. When you really look back on that, it just makes you love Trump even more because he was always standing up to the media complex. And that's really what it was that came down on Michael Jackson. Like I said, the record execs had power and he was fighting them and he was winning against them. He was going to eventually control the Beatles catalog. Next thing you know, he ends up dead. He first gets accused of being a pedophile and his entire legacy is destroyed with accusations that did not win in court. He, like I said, was acquitted. Go back, watch that episode that we did on him and inform yourself on that. But it's incredible to see that. And people are now replaying these clips and are feeling some type of way about Kamala Harris. And I think the majority of people just want to know, who is this woman and who does she work for? Well, we left off on quite a note last weekend, or at the end of last week, rather. We have received a lot of information. You guys have been emailing us incessantly. I know I'm not responding to the emails. I am reading them and going through them. I'm creating this really long timeline. I'm also trying to be careful not to overwhelm you guys with too much information because there's so many moving pieces and they all have so many names. And I've just been carefully organizing things because we have time. We have a little bit of a runway ahead of the election, and I want to make sure that I get it right. So we left off interested in Vioris Cambridge Harris McPherson, okay? This is a woman that we believe is Kamala's grandmother, or her mother, really. She looks so much like her. But anyways, her true grandmother, not Beryl, a woman who I believe looks a little too much like Kamala and has been rather conspicuously just left out of the family Jamaican heritage story. So I'm just going to show you the side-by-side of Kamala and Vioris. And we then learned, because someone pointed it out to us, that actually Vioris's birth name is Iris. I can't believe I missed this. I produced the birth certificate and obviously did not read it for details. But yes, if you look at her birth certificate again, it actually says in that second column that her birth name is Iris. Now that explains why whoever created her profile on Ancestry.com put Iris in parentheses. On that far side, it says Vioris Anita, and that's her baptismal name. As I've been going through all of these documents, I realized baptismal names are very important, or were at this time, because they then used them and pretended that it was their legal names on other documents. But yeah, so when we see that, and we go, okay, so we now have a grandma Iris. That's very interesting. We know that this woman was born in 1927 in St. Elizabeth, Jamaica, and her last name was Cambridge. And I'm wondering, and I'm sure you're wondering, could she be the Miss Iris that Donald refers to so affectionately throughout his piece? He claims in that piece, by the way, that Miss Iris's ancestry is unknown to him, right? He also claims that that Iris that he mentions is his grandmother. So it would be Kamala's great-grandmother and not her grandmother, which I suspect she is. And I'm going to show you the extremely Black woman that we are shown a picture of, a picture that he claims he captured of Kamala sitting on Miss Iris's lap. Now, I have received, by the way, a note from a woman who is in her 70s who swears that she knew this family and that that woman there worked for the family. As we work to get in touch with her, she's a bit older. Trust me, I am on it. I've reached out. I'm going to actually place a phone call later on today to try to see if she'll pick up her phone, if she's easier to connect with that way, to get to the bottom of whether or not she really does know this family. She claims that she worked for the family for so long, didn't want to leave, and that is, in fact, a picture of the help, which would be wild. Absolutely wild if we can get somebody to confirm that. What we do now know for a fact is that Iris Cambridge, so going back to, I'm going to have to start calling them like White Iris and Black Iris, like just because I think it's easier for you guys to know who I'm speaking about. So White Iris, who died in Broward County, we know for a fact now that she is related to Kamala Harris, and I'm going to tell you how we determine that fact. It is now undeniable. Because when Kamala Harris was effectively handed the torch from Biden after they staged an effective coup back in August, CNN couldn't help themselves and immediately ran an article, instantly reminding the world that Kamala's Black. She's Jamaican. Instantly, let's Blackify her immediately. Here is the article that they ran. And it essentially had a title like about her Jamaican roots or whatever. And embedded in the article, it was a man named Sherman Harris. And he was speaking about his second cousin, Kamala. I'm just going to read this to you. It says, 3.5 years ago, Sherman Harris gathered together a clutch of family and friends at his home on a hilltop here in rural Jamaica to watch his cousin step into history. As Kamala took the oath of office as vice president of the United States, the room erupted in screams and tears, he recalled. Quote, even talking to you now, I feel some sort of tears from my eyes too. You know, Sherman Harris, 59, said in an interview with CNN, it's like tears of joy. So later throughout that article, he claimed that Oscar Harris, that would be Kamala's grandfather, Donald Harris's father, and his father, Newton Harris, were brothers. So that would make Kamala his second cousin. Okay. Now, if my theory is correct, that would mean that he knew White Iris very well, because we know that White Iris and Oscar Harris were married until death did him part, until he died. Well, guess what we found? That same cousin Sherman Harris, who was featured in that CNN piece just from August. We were crawling through Facebook. We found his Facebook page, and he posted a sweet tribute to his aunt Iris, White Iris. It was a Facebook posting of White Iris's obituary, and beneath that obituary posting, he wrote this tribute to her. There it is. You can see the third one down says, Sherman Harris, rip auntie, you're never forgotten. Lasting memories of shared episodes. That is the exact same Sherman Harris pictured in the CNN article. And again, this was posted under the obituary of the Iris Harris that died in Broward County. So this confirms that Iris, the White Iris, is indeed related to Kamala and Donald Harris. If Sherman is telling the truth, this would make Iris her grandmother officially. Kamala Harris must answer for this. She absolutely must answer this. You cannot be posting up pictures of you with a black woman saying that it's your grandma, okay? You cannot do that. And then come to find out there was another woman who you look much more like, and we have all of the evidence in the world that she is your true grandmother. That is just, it is too wild. It is just too out of pocket. We are going to need answers to that. Because if what Sherman Harris, who was interviewed by CNN, is saying is true, then there is no room here. There's no situation in which Black Beryl, this woman, is her legitimate grandmother, okay? And by the way, I want to say, just keeping up, looking at this Beryl, she in no way favors Donald Harris. Let's get a side-by-side of Beryl and Donald Harris. Like, what are we even speaking about? If you put this together, how are you getting Beryl from this woman and Oscar Harris? I don't see it. Now, again, genes can be funny, but then when you put him next to our white Iris, I go, okay, look at those squinty eyes here. I could see a little bit of a similarity here. He does seem to somewhat favor her. Again, now we're just believing our own eyes and asking the right questions. What we do know for a fact is that woman on the right, Iris Harris, is related to Kamala Harris, and we need answers, okay? We need answers. Now, also last week, we left you on a tidbit. We were searching for a Christopher Harris. Do you guys remember that? I'm going to briefly jog your memory here. Christopher Harris was at the time, anonymous person who signed off on Oscar Harris's death certificate. And we were just imagining, okay, we're looking for information on Donald. We know Oscar Harris was married to Iris Vioris, whatever you want to call her. And I would just imagine that Donald would have been there by his father's side when he died, because when your father dies, you tend to be by their side. Well, I'm going to pull up that death certificate again. This is, again, Oscar Harris's death certificate. And you can see on the bottom there, number 16. If you go right there to the bottom, it says qualification, meaning the person filling this out. The qualification is that he is the son of Oscar Harris. And then it says something about the body being buried. And he signed it off. And we were going, okay, who is this Christopher Harris? Like, this would mean that Donald Harris has a brother. This means that this guy would be definitively be Kamala's uncle. Where is he in the world? While we were able to locate Chris, he was also featured in the Kingston Gleaner. That has given us a lot of information, the newspaper, in an article that was dated back to June 24th, 1983, announcing the Council of Jamaicans in Ontario, Canada. I'm going to show you a picture, okay? See these pictures of these people. That one in the middle is Chris Harris. Presumably, that would be Oscar Harris's son that he had with Iris Vioris Harris, okay? It says in the bottom there, the newly formed Council of Jamaicans, and it tells you, again, from left to right, that you're looking at a man named Bromley Armstrong, and next to him is Bev Hayden, and that person who looks rather fair-skinned in the middle is Chris Harris. I find it rather off-putting that Donald Harris does not mention many of his siblings in his piece about his Jamaican heritage. It seems like he's continually leaving out the white people. That just makes me a little bit uncomfortable. I'd almost say it's racist. Just abandon an entire side of your family. Like, don't you find that quite weird that piece so much focuses on introducing and discussing everyone who's Black, but you leave out your own siblings? We've thus far, by the way, been able to locate 2 other confirmed siblings. So these would be the siblings of Donald Harris, the children of Oscar Harris and Iris, our white Iris Harris, who died in Broward County. He doesn't mention them. Did Kamala have a relationship with them growing up? I don't know. And I want to be clear, we still cannot find much information about Donald Harris himself. We did find some old newspaper clippings of a Donald Harris, which we are working to confirm it's him, that was involved in a lot of plays, in theater, and in drama in Jamaica. And I'm going, okay, well, the piece that I read about him, he was constantly speaking about the farm and the lessons on the farm. It would be wild if he turned out to be another theater kid, because you know that I have had my fill of theater kids and them being put into positions of power, a la President Zelensky, Justin Trudeau, Emmanuel Macron. So I'm really hoping that this is not the right Donald Harris, but again, we're working to confirm it. Still cannot find his birth certificate. I still cannot find really anything else that would make him seem legitimate to me. Like I can't find Donald Harris, but we are still looking, we are still searching, and we're not going to stop. Now I'm going to take a quick pause here to thank one of our sponsors before we get into this next really interesting tidbit about the Kamala Harris scandal. First and foremost, I've been telling you guys about Hallow because so many people are recognizing that it is a time for prayer and people want to have a deeper prayer life but don't know where to get started. Well, I get that, and so does Hallow, which is why I'm excited to tell you about Hallow's new prayer challenge, How to Pray. Prayer can be such a daunting thing to undertake. Where do you start? What do you say? I remember when I was learning about Catholicism, being in awe of how many different practices there were when it comes to prayer. But it does not have to be overwhelming. Hallow's new prayer challenge will take you through short daily sessions over the next 2 weeks with an all-star lineup of spiritual leaders and guests, giving you all the essentials to creating a rich prayer life. They'll teach you how to pray through scripture, how to do imaginative prayers, how to incorporate prayers that have been around for centuries, and so much more. You'll get a new guide every day, and some of the guides include Father Mike Schmitz, Jonathan Rumi, who plays Jesus in The Chosen, and Mark Wahlberg, and many others. The only way that we can get through these crazy times is by getting closer to God, and prayer is the best way to do that. So download the Hallow app for 3 months free at hallow.com/Candace. Again, that is hallow.com/Candace. All right, guys. Now, so many of you emailed me about Alves Cambridge. You guys familiar with that? Never heard of that name? It's okay. So Alves Cambridge, interestingly enough, is the brother of our white Iris down in Florida, okay? She had a brother named Alves, and they lived near each other in Broward County, and they were extremely close. Many of you guys pointed out to me that I missed in her obituary, and I did miss this. I don't know how I did, but there were so many pictures of her and her family and so many pictures of Alves and his wife of 68 years with Iris. They were extremely tight-knit. That was all very true. And Alves Cambridge passed away in 2020, and in his obituary, there were some things that were of interest and sent me down various rabbit holes, and I'm still collecting that data. But I want to show you his obituary, particularly the second page of it, okay? So this is his obituary. It goes on and talks about how he, worked 6 days a week, opened a hardware store, and worked in Jamaica through 2 fires that destroyed his business. He persevered and rebuilt to the mantra that you can destroy the tree, but the roots remain untouched. Talked about how him and his wife, Vaughn, loved to travel around the world. Yes, there's a lot of stuff I'd like to speak to you guys about Vaughn, but first I want to introduce Alves because, like I said, there's so much information, it's important to slow it down. Look at this third portion here, okay? Al would want you to know that he was a Freemason and visited many lodges around the world on his travels. He was also president of the Jockey Club for a time, okay? So this means that when this man passed away, he wanted the world to know, this is, again, Iris's brother Alves, that she came over with on a ship. We found the ship logs. I believe it was in 1958. She came over with him on a ship, and they settled in Miami-Dade. And he wanted the world to know, after he passed away, that he was a Freemason and he visited many lodges around the world. Now, this is a great time for us to pause and discuss Freemasonry because there are so many different elements, cultural elements of this, which I think a lot of Americans have the wrong idea. Either they don't think Freemasonry is real, or they don't believe that Freemasonry is relevant, or they believe that Freemasonry is innocent. And I'm going to speak about all of those things. So first and foremost, what is Freemasonry? Full stop, okay? So during the late Middle Ages, the world was united under the Holy Roman Catholic Church, okay? So if you had any opposition to the church throughout Europe, you were forced to go underground, right? We were a Christian society. And among the only organized groups that were able to move freely throughout Europe were these guilds of stonemasons. And they would then be, therefore, because they could move freely, hence Freemasons, they were able to maintain meeting halls or lodges in virtually every major city. And the Masons were essentially very talented at architecture, and they had a bunch of secret knowledge, sometimes secret knowledge of architecture and of other topics. And that knowledge was dated back to the times of Egypt, right? And it was essential maintaining this knowledge in the construction of European churches and cathedrals. So one of the things that is well known is that Freemasons were in opposition to the church, right? They wanted to crush the church, which is why it is not ironic that the person who founded the Mormon church, as just one example, many of the churches, the very many Protestant faiths that we have, was Joseph Smith, and he was a Freemason. That's a fact, just as one example. Now, you may know some people that are Freemasons, and you're going, well, I know this person, and he goes to a lodge, and he's completely harmless. Yes, it is a known thing that 97% of Freemasons are not in the top tier degree of Freemasonry. And it is understood that at the top tier degree of Freemasonry, you essentially become one of the makers of the world. Now, I remember, and I've spoken about this on this podcast, but one of the things that kind of ripped me into a new reality last year when I was studying with some priests was they sort of looked at me. I was in London at the time, and they just said to me in the kindest way possible, you Americans don't know anything about real history. You know nothing about your own country. You don't even know that your country was established by Freemasons, right? And it's interesting, of course, that I'm referring to Catholic priests. I believe a lot of the reasons why people hate Catholicism or hate Catholics is because Catholics know history. They have been recording history for a long time. So if you're a Freemason and you're working to rewrite history, or you're telling people that America was established because of this or because of that, and you completely remove the aspects of Freemasonry from our textbooks as they have, then yeah, you are going to be at conflict with the Catholic Church, who remembers everything and keeps, very good records of history. So for those of you guys who've never even heard of that, and like I said, I would have been among you. I'm very new to relearning American history through the lens of Freemasonry. Some known Freemasons: George Washington was a Freemason. Thomas Jefferson was a Freemason. Benjamin Franklin was a Freemason. Buzz Aldrin was a Freemason. Don't get me started. For those of you that have been listening to this podcast for a long time, you already know where I'm at when it comes to NASA and the weird satanic chants that they were doing to establish the Apollo program and all of the weird stuff that happened leading up to the moon landing. So I freaked out when I learned Buzz Aldrin was a Freemason, and it's not helping my case in believing those moon landings. I'll tell you that for free. Franklin Roosevelt was another Freemason. Sigmund Freud, that got me into a lot of trouble this year because I started speaking about Sigmund Freud. He's a member of B'nai B'rith, and I was telling you, like, this guy who keeps writing about child sex, there are some things you should know about him. He was a Freemason. Mozart was a Freemason. Okay, so at a point in our history, and likely even today, it was all about a battle for power, a battle for dominion over the earth, and they had all different sorts of aims. And it is true that different groups, high degree of Freemasons, practiced sexual rituals. And again, that gets back into the origins of NASA. For those of you that are new to this, you got to go back and watch the NASA episode. Watch the Michael Jackson episode. Watch the NASA origin story. It's shocking. It's all in your face. You can look this up literally on Wikipedia. It's so known. I'm not like on a weird Reddit feed learning this information. They believed that some of these people, and particularly speaking about NASA, that you could perform these sex rituals and have these like group sex settings, and you would be able to summon demons. And they believed that they would be able to conquer the earth this way. These people who established Apollo thought this. These people, I was sharing a story. Aleister Crowley was one of these individuals. He was quite literally kicked out of Italy, by Mussolini because he was hosting a sex ritual amongst the powerful elite. That's what I think is the biggest takeaway. The biggest takeaway is that the people that practiced these sexual rites and believed in sex magic and did these things in an effort to conquer the world were elites. This wasn't like a random group of people in the middle of nowhere living in the desert doing this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, this was the most powerful people in the world in an effort to believe that they would be able to conquer the nations. It's important to know that as we continue to discuss everything that's happening, because I even had to reset my mind as I was looking into Kamala's history and all this weird stuff. And I was going, okay, what was the world up to in the 1940s, as just an example? If Donald Harris was born in 1938, what was actually going on in our country? Well, we're talking about World War II period, where this stuff was going on, where you had elites that were practicing thelema. We're talking about when Freemasonry was relevant, where these sorts of individuals who thought like this, leading up into the 60s, obviously, free love, sex, rock and roll. Many people don't know the basis of that was Aleister Crowley's religion, thelema. Lima. That was the precursor. It wasn't like a bunch of adults by themselves decided to have multiple partners. It was that a bunch of elites behind closed doors decided to introduce sexual liberation as a means to conquer nations. And it worked. It crushed the church in the process, right? Having multiple partners is explicitly anti-Christian, obviously, making people not desire marriage. These are the sorts of things that actually took place in this country. And you can learn all of these things, by the way. I posted my book list on locals.com because people were like, where are you learning all this stuff? I'm like, I just read stuff that's outside of a textbook. And of course, start with that book, Chaos, because the 60s was a very, very wild time. People changing their names. Of course, prior to that, you had McCarthyism. In your textbook, you learned that he was just a paranoid guy, paranoid senator. It's not true. It was real. Communists were invading America. They were changing their names. They were selling our secrets. And he was brave to fight and stand up and to speak about it. Anyways, like I said, I want to just speak about that because when you see Alvis Cambridge openly put something like Freemasonry, I don't think that's a ha-ha joke after you die. He just was like, I'm not going to say this until I die, and then I want you guys to just publicize it. So we have someone who is likely Kamala Harris's great uncle or uncle, who is explicitly saying that he's a Freemason, and now we have a woman who is about to be president of the United States. How does that make you feel? Like I said, we don't want to overwhelm you guys. Another important part of this process is we don't want to make any mistakes by going through all of these documents too quickly because that's what they're waiting on, right? If everyone's watching these episodes, they're seeing the numbers, they understand people are processing this. They're waiting for me to make one slip up so they can like pound and be like, she's crazy. So I'm going through everything very slowly and very meticulously. We're investigating every claim that people are making, but until we feel certain that it's correct, we're not presenting it. Tomorrow, we are going to take a closer look, however, at Kamala's alleged mother, Shyamala Goplin. There are some interesting things in her filings, some interesting things about her pursuit of citizenship in America that have come up, and we feel well equipped to discuss those things. I also wanted to tell you guys that are emailing us at info@CandaceOwens.com that there are still a few things we're looking for. So if you can find it or you come across it, please send it. One of those things is Donald Jasper Harris's birth certificate or a yearbook entry. He did list the schools that he went to. Maybe you are someone who attended those schools and you have an old yearbook. I just would like to confirm that his name has always been Donald Jasper Harris because I can't seem to find him. Also, regarding Alvis Cambridge, our Freemason, Iris's brother, we can't locate his birth certificate. We know that he was born in St. Elizabeth, Jamaica, per his naturalization document, but we can't find a birth certificate for him. And so if you can find that, please send it over. We also would like to find Alvis Cambridge's marriage certificate. He married a young woman whose name was Cynthia Yvonne Lopez. I'll say that again, Cynthia Yvonne Lopez. And we just cannot seem to locate that marriage certificate. It should be either they got married in Jamaica or they got married in the Miami, Broward County area. So if you guys can find that, please send it over. We're going to pause there on the Kamala stuff. Much more coming out more this week. We're going to completely stay on it because we are just so shocked by all of these discoveries that we're making. And by the way, I believe she's dangerous. Based on everything that I have seen, my gut instinct tells me that what I'm looking at is some sort of a well-organized communist effort to get people into America. And now I have an understanding that there's some level of Freemasonry that is involved in this. And so that makes Kamala Harris very dangerous. So we shouldn't just be laughing at this. We should recognize this woman is about to assume top office and her feet should be held to the fire. She should have to answer questions about why she is lying about her heritage, who that Grandma Beryl, Black Beryl, and Black Iris are. Because I don't believe she's related to them, not even one drop. That's all I'm saying. All right, guys, I want to remind you about Goldco because this election season has been insane and we really don't know who is going to win in November. But there is one thing that we do know, or at least I know. I'm going to be buying gold and silver The United States has $35 trillion in debt. There is no better time to protect your money and savings while you still can. You can go to CandaceLikesGold.com and you'll learn about the top-rated precious metals company, Goldco, and how they can help you. They are a great company that is top-rated with over 6,000 five-star reviews and a whole bunch of awards. Not only do they support my show, but my listeners can get up to a 10% instant match in bonus silver on qualified orders. So if you're worried about your money losing value or you just want to buy some precious metals that you can physically hold on to, Goldco can help. Visit CandaceLikesGold.com. Again, that's CandaceLikesGold.com. All right, guys, I did want to show you this because I'm like, yeah, this is amazing. People should be putting pressure on LeBron James. I am still so not okay with the fact that this man who elected himself the president of all things Black lives, anytime a Black criminal died, he was out there telling people to protest on the streets like a government plant. I'm just not okay with his silence. I genuinely am not okay with his silence on the issue of Diddy, who he claims was his boy, who he claimed had the best parties ever. And he's still silent. So we have this former NBA player, Kwame Brown. He has a YouTube channel, and he is now calling out LeBron James. I think it's fantastic. This is what needs to happen, and it shouldn't just be Kwame, but take a listen.
Kwame Brown been sitting here chilling, talking politics, while LeBron James been ducking smoke from Candace Owens. He also been ducking smoke from Chael Sonnen. He been ducking smoke for anybody asking him questions about this goddamn Diddy situation. You know, because them the greatest parties alive. You know, LeBron James on camera saying, ain't no party like a Diddy party. And we know them some naked ass parties.
Those are, I can confirm, some naked ASS parties. That is a fact. Kwame is correct. And he does seem to be ducking smoke. And I'm not here for it. I'm just not here for trying to convince me that this guy who alleges that he is the king had nothing to say when we watched a video of Cassie Ventura getting beat by his friend Diddy. Could you imagine like purporting yourself to be a person that cares so much about Black lives, branding yourself in that manner, and then you have an opportunity to speak out on something that is so obviously morally wrong and horrific, and you choose silence? Here's my thing. If he's going to choose this silence, he better keep at it. I don't want to hear another political quotation or expression from LeBron James, from his ex feed in the streets. If he says anything, seriously, I'm just going to lose my mind, because the reality is he's a complete and utter fraud. He's an absolute fraud, hanging around with people who live their lives like that while trying to preach to the rest of us about the struggles facing Black Americans, but won't address the ones that were happening at the very parties that he was attending. It's an absolute nonsense. And by the way, you guys, it's about to get a lot worse, as we have predicted, as we have said. It's very obvious that there are politicians and executives who are above Diddy and involved in this ring who are likely going to get exposed. While an attorney named Ariel Mitchell Kidd, who's representing a new Diddy Combs accuser, says that she's been contacted regarding the sale of one of Diddy's tapes. Take a listen.
There already have been tapes leaking around Hollywood, being shopped around to individuals in Hollywood, but one particular person contacted me to shop a particular video they were in possession of, and to contact the person who was in the video to see if they were interested in purchasing the video before it became a public knowledge.
I've heard this before, so like a catch and kill.
Catch and kill, correct.
Wow. Can you, and I guess you can't reveal the person who is on
No,
this
I can't
tape.
explain who the person was, but Mr.
High profile?
Mr. Combs was in the tape, and this other person is, I would venture to say, more high profile than Mr. Combs.
Really?
This was actually in his Atlanta home, at a home he had in Atlanta at one point. And it does seem that the person isn't like looking into the video, so it's, to me, doesn't seem like that person knows they're being videotaped. It doesn't seem like they're active participant in the videotaping, like they're being surreptitiously recorded it.
Unbelievable. A lot of things to unpack there. Well, first and foremost, what we can understand is that people are now having to buy back their own tapes. By the way, this is tale as old as Hollywood Time. If you've read that book that I've recommended to you, Hollywood Babylon, this was already going on, that they would get women on tapes and then have them buy it back, or have like pictures of them and have them buy it back. The expression peeping Tom actually comes from an old Hollywood director who put holes, just like Diddy did, at his house and would have these raunchy parties and then would catch people on film. This is tale as old as Hollywood time. Like I said, Hollywood has always been a town filled with debauchery and drugs and murder and lies and deception and people that are looked up to and hailed to as heroes and kings and as beautiful queens who live their lives like this in private, which is just truly sickening. But she's saying that there's someone bigger than Diddy. Who could that be? At his Atlanta home. Who do you think it was that didn't realize they were being recorded at his Atlanta home? There's not many names in hip hop that I would say are bigger than Diddy. Is it she's referring to more powerful, perhaps an executive that's more powerful? My best guess is that that person will buy back the tape, but just like what happened in Hollywood Babylon, there's probably more copies of it that have been made. And you just can't keep buying these sorts of tapes. And what really upsets me, by the way, is how casually she's discussing this, which means she's not the only person. It's being shopped around. That means right now, all of Hollywood is colluding to keep this on the low. Like, no one has come forward and said, I don't care about the tape being shopped around, but I do want people to know that this person was engaged in this on camera. Like, nobody has that moral clarity to just come out and say it. Instead, they're all just going to stay quiet because they all know that they're a part of the same ecosystem. They all know that if they tell the truth about what goes on in Hollywood, they'll be chased out of it. And they'd rather keep their place in Hollywood and live amongst these deranged stars than do the right moral thing. It's all really, really sickening. But of course, we will stay on that story, you guys. I am going to just throw it to one more advertisement before we get into your comments. I can't wait to hear what it is that you guys have to say. But first, I'm going to tell you guys about American Financing because mortgage interest rates are dropping and are now in the 4s finally. If you've been waiting to figure out how to get your finances in order, you need to call my friends at American Financing today. Many hardworking Americans are carrying high credit card balances that charge 20% or more each month. It's time to get rid of those. American Financing's salary-based mortgage consultants are helping homeowners just like you tap into their home's equity to get out of high-interest debt. They're saving their average customer $800 a month by doing this. With the rates dropping, the decision is easy. All it takes is a 10-minute, no-cost, no-obligation phone call to find out how much you can save. And if you start today, you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments. Call American Financing today at 800-795-1210. Again, that's 800-795-1210. Or you can visit americanfinancing.net/Owens. That's americanfinancing.net/Owens. All right, guys, let's read some of your comments. We know we're going to do that just on Rumble because we're quietly building on Rumble. I really wish I could read your guys on YouTube as well, but I hope you'll hit the link and follow us over to Rumble if you are here on YouTube. Also, if you want to support our independent work because we are not monetized here, please take a second, if you're enjoying this investigative journalism, to go to locals.com and find me and give whatever you can monthly to support our independence because we're having so much fun. And we love that we do not rely on YouTube anymore and that we can say what we want to say and know that you guys have our backs. We're going to stay on this Kamala thing. Again, locals.com, and you can find me and give a gift to support our independence. We are now cutting over to Rumble to answer some questions. All right, let's get ready to rumble. This person, RH2nd, writes, Candace, you are a ray of sunshine on a yellow brick road in a hellscape of evil vaccines.